Alright, we're going to learn watercolor techniques. So you will need a container with water on both sides of the divider, watercolor tray, paper, brush, and you will need 2 or 3 pieces of paper towel. That's what you will need. So we're going to learn 6 basic techniques. So technique number 1 is called wet and wet. And you want to use just plain water. And you're going to paint an area just with plain water to start with. Back and forth. And you want to make sure you control the brush by having your fingers touch either all or part of your fingers on the metal ferrule. You have the wood handle, the metal ferrule, and then the little hairs, the bristles. So I want to paint with plain water. So water is very important. You want to change your water often. So plain water. You get your brush wet, kind of just tap it on the side, and then you just choose a color. It doesn't matter what colors you work with when you practice. So I'm going to use a little bit of red. And what you do is you just kind of touch it in there, and then you can see how it kind of spreads out everywhere. That is called wet and wet. And then this is how it looks once it dries. So it looks like it's still wet even though it's dry. So that is the wet and wet technique. So you want to clean your brush out, kind of tap it on the side. Next one is going to be a flat wash. And I'll just choose another kind of random color. I'll just use some green. And for that, you're just painting back and forth, hanging on to part of the metal ferrule. Back and forth in one direction, like this. So it looks nice and flat and smooth and even. It's called a flat wash. Okay? That's what you can do. If it gets a little bit of too much on one side, you can kind of just spread it out a little bit. Basically, you're just going back and forth. That is a flat wash. Alright, and then once that is dry, it'll look nice and smooth and flat like these. Next one is a rough wash. So you take your brush, you can go ahead and paint in different directions. Plain water again. If you're not getting plain water, you want to go change your water container. You need to change your water container often when you work with watercolors. So I'm going to get the brush wet, just kind of tap it off, and I'll just go ahead and switch to a blue color. And for this, you can just paint in different directions. So it's going to look rough. And then once you get that done, what you do, take a paper towel, and you want to wad it up so you have a rough edge like this. It's just kind of all over in different parts. You don't want to use for example, a smoothed out area. That would be like this. You want to use kind of a rough area. What you do before it dries, you take this rough area, push it down, pull it up, and it looks kind of opposite of that. This is nice and flat and smooth, and that is rough looking. And when it dries, it will look like it's still rough, such as that. That is called a rough wash. Next one is called a graded wash. Again, clean out your brush, tap it on the side. I'll use a purple. And what you do for this is you paint one line of color. You want to clean your brush off. Tap it on the side. Notice I'm not drying my brush off each time. I'm just kind of tapping it on the side. And you go halfway across your color. And you start going back and forth. Kind of down across your paper. And see how it's just kind of fading away and like disappearing. Okay, that is a graded wash. Like it's on a slope or a slant. Not like it's in grade like A, B, C, that kind of a grade. Looks like it's on a slope. It's going like dark to light. It's kind of like a shaded type of technique, like you're doing shading. Next one is called a streak wash. You get your brush wet, tap it on the side, and what you want to do is you actually take your brush and you split it into 2 or 3 parts. Just like this. split it apart. And then you go into a color you've already used that might be a little bit damp, a little bit of some color still in there, a little bit of water, and you just kind of touch it in there. Okay, sometimes it goes back together like that on accident. And then what you do is you barely touch it to your paper, and you go across, and you get a streak wash. This is a streak wash. You're just painting streaks. So you can see how that looks. And here's an example of a dry graded wash and a dry streak wash. So you paint streaks like that. So split it into 2 or 3 parts for your brush, like this. And last one is going to be dry brush. You get your brush wet, tap it off to dry it, and now you want to get a dry paper towel, and you want to get all the water out of the brush. Always want to rinse out your brush. Water is the most important thing. Right? And then you get your brush and you just kind of mess it up on purpose. So it's all messed up. Right? Just like that. And then you go into a color you've already used. I'll just go into this blue color. You just kind of tap it in there. You only want some color on the tips. Make sure you don't have too much, so I would tap a little bit on a paper towel, such as that, and then you're going to go and you're barely going to let it touch the surface of the paper. You're going to go back and forth. It looks very dry and scratchy. This is called dry brush technique. Again, I'm still hanging on to part of the metal ferrule when I do all of these techniques. If you hang on to the wood handle, you do get very shaky when you paint. In any of these techniques, you get very shaky like this. Hang on to the metal, and then you're more in control of the brush. So I'm hanging on part of the metal, back and forth, really dry, like that. You can go back and forth. You can actually even tap it on if you'd like to, like this for dry brush. You can actually tap it either way. If you're getting lines, like the streak wash, or you're getting polka dots on here, you've got too much water or too much paint on your brush. So very dry and scratchy like that. And then here's an example of the dry brush. So those are the 6 main techniques that we would be using for watercolor painting. So you're going to want to practice a couple of each of these, get comfortable with the medium and then how it works. And the medium just means what we're using. It's basically watercolor paint. All right, so you're ready to go ahead and give this a try.